Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here to race number 13 of Season 3 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. It's time to go short track racing here tonight at the Milwaukee Mile as these drivers get closer and closer to the Indianapolis 500, the season finale here, where, of course, we will crown not only an Indianapolis 500 winner, but the season champion. Seth Cole alongside of Matthew Rodriguez. And Matt,
Howdy.
Last week, did the nail get put into the coffin for everybody else's championship hopes with Robert Mileska going to Victory Lane in Kentucky?
I mean, effectively, I think it's a little bit of too little too late. I mean, even if Mileska kind of runs poorly the rest of the season, he pretty much will have his championship on lock. He would need to wreck out or not show up for the rest of the season for anyone else to really have a chance.
Qualifying is currently underway. A lot of the faster cars that we expect to see up at the front have actually gone out there and taken time. Right now, fastest car would be Robert Mileska III, Nick Degroot behind him in second, then Charles T. Derek Schaus and AJ Hobson putting in a very nice lap time there in the 63. Right now, they are the top five. We've still got about 6 drivers that have about a little more than 3.5 minutes to go out there, try and see if they can sneak into the top 5.
So just looking throughout the field here, obviously a strong run from Mileska and a strong run from Degroot as expected. Teed and Schaus, nice to see them up here as well. Schaus, I still have him penciled in for another win before the season ends.
Yeah, Schaus got very close back at Watkins Glen. We're looking here at Jim Harrick in the 57. We saw just moments ago Matt Wagner sitting on pit road. Those two drivers still yet to put down a lap time. Jim Harrick's had a actually really good consistency in the last couple of weeks. Had a solid outing last week at Kentucky and finished up inside the top 10 at Watkins Glen as well. He's actually had good qualifying speed too, so we'll see if maybe he can sneak up into the top 10 here.
No, I remember we mentioned him last week. I don't know if he's in the field here. I don't believe so, but definitely Victor Santos. Santos really kind of came out from nowhere last week. Obviously it looks like he is in the session here. My apologies. But he really came alive last week. I think he took Watkins Glen off and came back, really kind of set a state of the top 3.
Certainly did. Yeah, Victor Santos, very good at the mile and a half configuration tracks. But one thing that we know here today is maybe going to be more so than we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks, and that's going to be tire conservation, especially concerning that right front tire.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. With this being a flat track, a lot of his setup is based around helping the car turn on a flat track. Now, unfortunately, to turn and kind of keep that speed up, a lot of pressure and a lot of temperature gets put onto the right front, which unfortunately can turn it into a marshmallow, and you can easily lose a tire, blow it out, run into a wall, or the thing just won't turn, which evidently you'll meet the outside wall very quickly.
Matt Wagner, who comes into this race 4th in the point stand, you saw him first lap, 5th quickest, second lap, top of the board. So right now, Matt Wagner stands to pick up his first pole of the season, as we're looking now at the 3 of Dylan Moskowitz, who might possibly be the last driver to take time here in this qualifying session.
Now, speaking of Moskowitz was kind of one of those guys who snuck into a top 10 last week, almost had a top 5.
Yeah, Moskowitz, for the most part, runs the speedway races. We don't normally see him at the road courses. 10th in the point standings coming into this race. And, of course, a teammate to the current points leader, Robert Mileska III. So you got to be certain that some information gets passed back and forth between Mileska to his other 2 teammates. The other driver out of that team is Jeff Heisong, who we saw run really well last week, and he is in the field here tonight as well. It looks like right now he is slated to roll off from the 20th position. But these drivers start to get themselves ready here for qualifying to come to a conclusion, and it looks like nobody will be able to challenge Matt Wagner here for the pole position. We had some news announced this week that Season 4 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series, the schedule has been announced, and I know that there's a couple of tracks you were really excited about that were on the schedule there, Matt. Some new ones that they aren't running this season, going to be added to the schedule next year.
I mean, one of the dates that I've got circled down in my mind has to be Long Beach. I've heard some reactions in the chat with some moaning and groaning. Unfortunately, Lost Circuit of the Americas will be gained to Long Beach, and I'm actually kind of acceptable. I kind of like that.
Yeah, acceptable so much. He sent me in capital letters, Long Beach. He was very excited with the fact that that was going to be on the schedule. And also, Flatout Racing Network is going to be bringing you coverage of Season 4 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. So certainly looking forward to that. But first things first, we got to finish out this season. And here tonight at the Milwaukee Mile, it's been a while since these drivers have been at a track that you could technically call a short track. You got to go back about 4 weeks ago when they took to Worldwide Technology Raceway.
Yeah, and we saw the kind of the fireworks that happened at Worldwide Technology, and a lot of those guys, obviously, you're digging for as much room as possible, much real estate as possible. But at certain parts of the track, if you dug way too much, you'd easily lose the back end of the car. You'd end up in the wall, and again, there's nowhere to go.
Take a look at our starting lineup here tonight, brought to you by Lionheart IndyCar Series, as Wagner topples Robert Mileska III. Mileska was looking for his 9th pole on the season, but Wagner's going to get his first. They'll make up row 1. Nick Degroot, the former champion, he is going to be third alongside of Charles Teed, who I want to talk about Charles Teed in just a few moments as maybe a dark horse driver to look at, no pun intended. Then it's Eric Schaus, AJ Hobson, row 3, Eric Peterson, and Covey Moore, who was actually for a brief moment top of the board in practice before a lightning fast lap time from Mileska III dropped him down to second. So watch for Covey Moore to be consistent in speed here today. But as we look at the rest of the lineup here, Charles Teed last week had a great run at Kentucky, so he's got the momentum. And if you go back to the very first short track that these drivers took to earlier on this season, that was Iowa. Who went to victory lane? Charles Teed. So keep an eye on him. He could be the guy to watch here tonight to maybe try and join Robert Mileska III as the only two-time winner, or multi-time winner, I should say, on the season.
I mean, you got to look for some of these guys know that their championship season is pretty much over. So right now, we're just going for trophies. They're going for wins, and I think they can really scare some of these guys up in the front of the point.
Now, what do you think about track position here today? I mean, I was watching these guys in practice, trying to get an idea about, how easy it was going to be able to make passes in this race. Really didn't see a whole lot of passing going on. Mostly it was drivers out there running single file. I don't know if they were just measuring up their car to the cars either in front or behind them, or if they were concentrating on qualifying laps, but it's a short track, so I would assume passing is going to be a little bit more difficult for them than it would be maybe at a wider mile-and-a-half track.
Personally, in my approach, I would really love the qualify here because I don't want to be stuck back in the pack and have to work through some of these guys, because at that point I'm burning up my right front tire. I'm kind of using my tires to get around traffic that I easily could have gotten around in qualifying. So some of these guys up near about top 5, top 10, they'll be at a distinct advantage as long as they don't burn up their tires. They save their stuff a little bit for later in the race.
If anything I observed in practice would apply here into the race, I think that turn 2 wall is going to be a big Achilles heel for a number of drivers. A number of guys who were out there on long runs, had a lot of difficulty getting that car to turn back to the left, almost brushed that outside wall. And of course, with the chassis that these Indy cars run with those wheels exposed, that could be a lot of damage sustained for these drivers if they indeed do scrub that outside fence. Here we go, though. Race 13 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series at the Milwaukee Mile is green.
Quite a good start there from a Wagner in the 99. Obviously, he had a little bit of control of the restart, but obviously Robert Mileska trying to work his way towards him.
We are 3 wide going into turn 3. That was Covey Moore making the aggressive move to the inside of Eric Schaus and AJ Hobson, but he had to back out of it. And I was watching Charles Teed there going into turn 1. Looked like he kind of drifted up the track. I mean, you talked about the limited banking these drivers have to deal with. With cold tires, I would assume that car be awfully loose on the first couple corners.
Well, another thing is a lot of these guys, I mean, they may have not run practice of cars side by side. They may have been running single cars, and that's going to be another big thing of a lot of these guys. Hey, they may have been testing in track. They may have been doing hot laps all week, but it's only one car. When you get side by side, of course, the car in the high lane or the low lane takes away that line you've probably been practicing with the main part of the week. So that can easily throw you off your game.
Driver that we're used to seeing qualify up towards the front, Alex Van de Sant, not the best of qualifying efforts here today, and now trying to make forward progress. He's on the top side there in that black and slightly yellow gold machine, and then you've got to his inside the 15 of Covey Moore. It's a battle right now for the 7th position between those two, and Van de Sant going to make his way around the top side, so we can safely say multi-groove racing here tonight at Milwaukee.
Absolutely. I'm kind of curious once to get a little bit more rubber down on that top side, if it will really kind of come to life.
This battle now is going to be back around the 10th position. That's where Kobe Moore drops back into the clutches of Jim Brooks. Now, if we notice right there, going through turns 1 and 2, there's the access road coming off of pit lane, and it's separated by a yellow rumble strip. And you were talking here pre-broadcast, Matt, that there actually is a ruling based off of the race here today that drivers can utilize that if they so choose, but there's a little bit of a caveat to it.
Absolutely. Obviously, drivers are allowed to run all the way down to that yellow rumble strip, even further if they'd like. But they cannot advance their position below that yellow rumble strip. If you dive down there to advance your position, you will be black flagged if you do not give it back.
Now, I've noticed that nobody yet, at least up towards the front, has gone down to really use that. A couple of drivers have gone down, put their left sides on the rumble strip, but nobody has ventured any lower than that. And from what I remember, at least back at road courses with these Indy cars, is if you get onto the rumble strips, they're actually slicker than the racetrack itself. So that might be something I would think that would make these drivers think twice about maybe going down that low in 1 and 2.
I'd say with new tires, I wouldn't really be worried about the change in traction. But obviously on older tires, I mean, hey, the rumble strips have a different, almost a coefficient of traction where, I mean, you just kind of lose it, and easily with the right rears having a lot more traction, it'll just pull you around.
Riding on board here with the Stars and Stripes, number 88 of Michael Spell, as he looks ahead to Gary Corley and AJ Musselman. This is around the 15th position. For the most part, up towards the front, everything has gotten rather single file. Best battle right now might be where Alex Van de Santos trying to close up on the back bumper of Eric Schaus for the 6th position.
You know, I can tell you one guy who just really wants this season to end. That has to be Nicholas Winook. Man, he has not had a very good season here.
No, he certainly has not. Right now, Nicholas Winook, last car running in the 25th position. Another thing we should keep an eye on here, just based on the fact that the field has gotten themselves rather spread out, the fuel window for these drivers is going to change as this race goes on. The drivers are going to start out with roughly about 35 to 39 laps in the tank. When they come down pit road the first time, then they'll be able to go about 45 laps before having to come to pit road for what could potentially be a second and final time.
Now, I'm really curious about those guys who really are in the back 10th, 15th place here at the moment, that battling around, having that draft. That draft may save them a few more laps of fuel than guys up front like Wagner, Maletzka, Degroot, Teed, those kind of guys.
Jim Brooks in the 76, back in that area you were just talking about, around the 10th position. David Leclaire, who had a solid outing last week at Kentucky, running in that 12th position. And we know that he likes to ride the high side of the racetrack. Maybe not here today, though, because as stated, that outside wall is going to come and get you. But look right there, and yeah, he ran about the second and a half groove through 1 and 2. So one of those drivers that you cannot qualify as a bottom feeder, David Leclaire, and we've seen that all season long, especially at the mile and a halves.
It's like a battle for at least 6th here with Eric Schaus and Alex Van de Sant.
And Van de Sant has, since we dropped the green flag, picked up now 3 positions, trying to look for a 4th here on AJ Hobson. I got to wonder here in terms of the 317. I mean, he's making good time. He's picking up positions, but how much of his tires is he using up in all of these battles that he has to get into?
I mean, I'm kind of seeing him here, at least with Schaus, and he didn't really put up very much of a fight with Schaus, even though he had the dominant lane. I think he's really just trying to, well, as I say that, he's going for a pass now, but I really think he's just trying to save up his tires here and not really battle. I mean, obviously, if he's faster, he's going to let him go, trying to see if he can learn something for later in the race.
So now going to complete that pass on Schaus is, Schaus got a big run, going to cross him over off of turn 2. So that battle's not over just yet.
Remember, Schaus is looking for a little bit of redemption. I mean, obviously he had that big blunder at Watkins Glen, lost it to Van de Sant. So I think he may have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder trying to prove himself. Obviously, I'd love to see him get a win here before the end of the season.
Yeah, last week didn't quite go to plan for Eric Schaus either. Dropped another spot in the standings down to 6th. Right now, the best battling in the point standings has been going on from second place on back. Robert Maleska III, after picking up his 7th victory on the season last week at Kentucky, carries a 173-point lead over Alex Van de Sant coming into this race. And oh yeah, by the way, including tonight, there's only 6 races left in the season.
You know, I said it last week, and I was wondering the entire week if maybe I was wrong. But Matt Wagner, I mean, just the kind of performance he put on the first 20 laps here. I mean, last week I was questioning if maybe his dominance was over. Maybe he just fell off his horse, didn't have the consistency like he had. But I mean, he's kind of putting on a little bit of a clinic at the moment.
Matt Wagner's season started with a tremendous up, winning at Auto Club, but that has just been up, down, up, down, up, down. He's been good at the road courses. He's finished in the top 3 in all 3 of the road course stops we've had so far this season. But you're right, it just hasn't seemed to be the Matt Wagner we saw back in the season opener. So right now, getting the pole position, his first on the year, and right now, currently dominating this race. His lap times are equal, if not a tick better, than Robert Maleska III. So I think that he definitely could be looking here to possibly pick up his 2nd win of the season. It's been a bit of a winless streak here since race 1.
Another guy I want to point out here, I mean, David Leclaire. It kind of had. We talked about his season last week. I mean, it's been kind of a good finish or the wall, and unfortunately, last week it was kind of another one of the wall incidents. Kind of looking for him to have a little bit of consistency here.
Nick Degroot trying to run down Robert Maleska III. If you actually look at our top 3, he is the fastest of those 3 currently. Now, he may be getting a little bit of toe off the back bumper of the 91, but of course for Nick Degroot as well, that's another driver that has had an up and down season, had the pressure coming into this year as the defending champion, winning 5 races last year. This year, he's only got 1 win at the bank. That was back at Phoenix. But if you consider the fact that Phoenix is a track with not a whole lot of banking, especially over in 3 and 4, maybe slightly similar configuration here at Milwaukee.
You know, I really have to say, I mean, Degroot could have had a bigger chance at this championship and really could have probably took the fight over to the 91. But the big issue was, I mean, every time, but he really got a good run together, or really got a good piece of momentum going. I mean, something always happened. You mentioned it earlier before we started the broadcast, where again he was leading final lap at Auto Club, and unfortunately, an incident happened to him. And then I brought up Twin Rim Motegi, where I mean it was a fuel mileage gamble, and he gambled wrong.
No caution, but we have had an incident. David Leclaire in the 50 had a moment over. I think it was on the back straightaway. Immediately teleported to pit road. I don't know if he wrecked. I don't know if he had a connection issue. I don't see any smoke on the track, but Leclaire looks like he may be out of the race just like that. And this was a driver that was battling just outside the top 10.
So I went ahead and took a look back at that a little bit. It looks like Leclaire was just kind of got off the corner wrong, entered the corner wrong, just brushed the wall coming off, and Moskowitz was right there. It almost looks like Leclaire just tried to block a little bit for Moskowitz, and when he blocked, he kind of blocked that twice, and Moskowitz kind of just sent him a little bit.
We were talking about this pre-broadcast as well, about blocking in this race, and you were saying that you can block a driver with one motion, but then you can't change it back, and that might have been the case right there.
Absolutely. It kind of follows that F1 mentality where, I mean, again, once you commit to a block and you commit to a movement, you just can't really, with how fast these cars are, you just can't jerk out of the way and, block another run. It's just kind of unsportsmanship. And again, that kind of opens up the potential for a lot of big incidents to happen if you really start doing that.
About 10 laps away from when these drivers are going to have to start thinking about green flag pit stops, more so for fuel than tires. I'm pretty sure there'd be drivers here, if they could go 80 laps on a set of tires, they'd be willing to gamble that. Really haven't seen anybody terribly out of shape here as these tires have worn down, as we got a battle here for the 8th position. Eric Peterson, whoa! Covey Moore into the vicinity there, as they were both trying to get around the 63 of A.J. Hobson. So close quarter racing there. Add Jim Brooks into the mix, but as this is going on, I was going to highlight the drivers just up ahead of him. How about that 94? Good run here today for the Dryden machine.
I actually have been looking at the lap times a little bit, And I will say the leader, definitely Wagner, has fallen off a little bit from his original pace, but especially the 94, the 15 of Kobe Moore, and I believe the 76 of Jim Brooks. I mean, a lot of these guys that just go to, they really haven't lost any time off their laps. Obviously, the draft is pulling them along, but I almost think it's a better advantage to be behind another car than leading.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, if you look at the race leader, Matt Wagner, he ran a 22.143. The driver we're looking at right now, Dylan Moskowitz, only ran 2/10 slower. He's back in the 12th position. So yeah, not a whole lot of difference in terms of lap times from drivers that are out in clean air to drivers that are currently mired back in traffic. Oh boy, that was a close moment there off of turn 4. This is where they're all wadded up from 8th place on back. You almost had Kobe Moore into the back of Eric Peterson, and then Jim Brooks almost into the back of Kobe Moore. So if we end up having a caution come out prior to green flag pit stops, you might want to look in this group.
Well, remember, we were starting to joke a little bit that Eric Peterson really hasn't had a good day. I mean, obviously had a little bit of a few snafus with officiating and whatnot, but I mean, I think this would kind of add insult to injury, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and in case of Eric Peterson as well, I mean, this is a driver that is still searching. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's still searching for his first top 10 on the season. It has been a season to forget so far for him, but maybe down the home stretch, he can find a little bit of luck.
I mean, you got to think some of these guys, I mean, a lot of these guys saying, hey, I just need a few more races and I can really make something happen. Some of these guys are like, man, I don't want this season to end. I want a fresh slate so I can just have a do-over.
Boy, we had 3 wide back on lap 2. We got 3 wide on lap 36. That was, I believe, AJ Musselman muscling his way up through the middle with Jim Brooks and Dylan Moskowitz. He was able to make that work. Brooks is starting to fall back now. Craig Forsyth that challenges him to the outside for 13th place.
Man, I'm just seeing, I think that's the 94 of Jimmy Duran. Moskowitz really been poking his nose. You see Musselman, or not Musselman, I'm sorry. Craig Forsyth really stick his nose in there.
Oh, 94. Whoa! Yep, Forsyth's coming to pit road, and Dryden put a little bit of a block there on Dylan Moskowitz. Looks like another driver down pit road. That's Alex Van de Sant coming to pit road from the 4th position caution.
Oh, yeah. Looks like Gary Corley in the 7 car. Looks like out of 2. Looks like he may have gotten just a little bit of assistance. Oh, that doesn't look good.
Definitely made contact with the rear end of that car. Rear wing is missing. I also saw the 4 of Joe McAdory's speed decrease. I don't know if he got a piece of it or not. And I think just before that caution came out, I think the 91 of Robert Maleska III had actually crossed the commitment line. So he was able to make a pit stop there after the caution was waving.
Seth, I keep looking back at that incident that brought up the caution. I'm kind of in the group that's not a good look. But it was kind of everyone kind of stacked up, and it almost looks like Jim Brooks had nowhere to go.
Yeah, who was the car that was almost nearly stopped in the center of the corner there? Because that's what led to that contact where Corley was in the middle line. Car changes from the top side to come back down, and then the contact is made.
It honestly looks like Duran just kind of parked in the middle of the corner, almost like Moskowitz kind of shocked him a little bit. He wasn't expecting him to be there, and he expected a larger arc down. I don't want to completely put the blame on Duran because, I mean, I'm looking at Brooks here, and Brooks he tried something different. I mean, obviously with the 7 of Corley kind of going down the block, Brooks went down to the apron and kind of went to the no zone. But, I mean, when he came back up, there's almost no room for him.
I mentioned about the fact that I saw Joe McAdory rather slow in the telemetry. I think he got a little piece of the incident as well with the right front wing. So at least 3 drivers involved in that one. And going back to your point there too, it was just looking like, I was mentioning that a lot of drivers, despite the fact they had nearly 40 laps on their tires, they still looked like they were doing pretty well, managing speed through the center of the corner and everything. The one driver that really looked like he was struggling, though, when we crossed that lap 35 threshold was Jimmy Dryden. Was really slow off the corner, and right there, as we saw, through the center of the corner. So, Boy, that's something we got to keep an eye on here if we go into another long green flag run, if other drivers run into that issue, because it's a short track. Different drivers are going to have different braking zones and different let-off points, and that could lead to some contact possibly later on down the road as well.
I think that may have been a little bit of a brain fade as well. I think that may have been a little bit of brain fade. Just, hey, you're running your same line for so many laps, or hey, you're digging for so many laps, and eventually, just suddenly you have your preferred line taken away, and it kind of just throws yourself off.
Now, I mentioned that Robert Maleska III, he had crossed the commitment line to pit road prior to the yellow flag coming out. Therefore, he remained on the lead lap, and he is going to cycle around as the race leader with Matt Wagner, Nick Degroot, Eric Schaus, and Charles T, the completion of the top 5. And this is going to be interesting, too, to know just how strong a race car Matt Wagner has, because it's not like Maleska's at a huge disadvantage tire-wise to the other drivers behind him. He's only got 2-lap-old tires, and those 2 laps were run under pacing when he left pit road.
That's it, Seth. You know what I'm looking forward to? I'm personally looking forward to seeing these guys on full-body stock cars. I mean, I've seen how some of these guys race, and I'm wondering how they're kind of moved to stock cars. They're racing the Coca-Cola 600 on June 6th. I'm kind of curious on how they'll look.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got a little bit more option of being able to move somebody out of the way if you're in a stock car than you do in a Indy car that could easily catch flight with just the wrong amount of contact.
An unguided missile. We'll bring that one back.
Yes, exactly. We gave you the top 5. AJ Hobson's hung tough. He's going to restart in 6th. Covey Moore, AJ Musselman, Eric Peterson, and Dylan Moskowitz. That's going to be the top 10. Only one driver is going to be off the lead lap. We go back green. That's the 18 of Jeff Hysong. 24 cars running out of 25 that took the green. David Leclaire, who we mentioned having the earlier issue, he has DNF'd. He will finish 25th here tonight. As the green flag about to come back out. We're already a third of the way through this race. It's only our first restart of the night, and we've now entered into that area here, Matt, as we mentioned, where the fuel window is going to be a little bit longer for these drivers, so we probably won't see them down pit road again until somewhere between laps 80 to 90. Yeah,
I mean, when we were talking pre-race with some of the drivers, they really mentioned that you can basically do about 1 gallon every 3 laps, and you can basically get about 15 gallons for a stint, so you can kind of make this last a little bit longer, but again, you've got to factor in draft as well. If you draft and let off at select points, you can save a few extra gallons here and there, and that will make you go a little bit longer.
Certainly will. One thing that we've been told, though, the longer a run goes on, and obviously we've been told with today that right front's going to tighten the car up, but we know that when that fuel tank gets emptier and emptier, the back end of the car gets lighter. So imagine going into a corner as low banking as Milwaukee, where the front end doesn't want to turn and the back end wants to do nothing but turn.
I mean, you either get a Formula Drift car or you get an ill-handling Indy car. And unfortunately, that's going to be what a lot of these guys are dealing with. One guy I just saw lose a bunch of positions has to be Musselman. He almost tried to send it in on Covey Moore. Moore shut the door, and he had to really jump out of the gas, dropped all the way down to 9th.
Other driver that also had I don't know if he got the wall, but he lost a ton of spots, was Craig Forsyth. He was up around the 14th position. Just look back at him, and he's drifted back to 20th place.
Looking back here, I don't really see any adverse effects. I think he got off the pit lane late. Oh!
Let's not forget
looking back
that
at Peterson.
Let's not forget that both Forsyth and Van Descent, they were up inside of the top, well, one was inside of the top 5, the other one was just outside of the top 10. When they came down pit road, they actually had to take the wave around when that caution came out because they had been trapped a lap down at the timing of that yellow flag.
Man, Moskowitz is someone I really see is trying to attack that yellow rumble strip, at least in 1 and 2. And it's had varied success for him. I see him 1 and 2 laps. I mean, it works, but the next 2-3 laps, it just doesn't. So I'm kind of wondering if the inconsistency is really just throwing him off here.
He's also been making quite a few evasive moves on the back straightaway, trying to get around AJ Musselman. We're riding on board with him there, and you could just kind of see that it didn't look all that steady. Almost looked like it was sliding through 1 and 2 as he went down there and tried to straddle that yellow rumble strip.
And see, the key with the Indy cars is trying to be as smooth as possible because really, for any form of racing, as smoother you are, the faster you will be, and the kind of the less time you'll lose. And I think that's one thing Moskowitz is really trying too hard at the moment, trying to catch a car in front of him, and I think he's just kind of forcing himself to be a little bit less smooth.
Covey Moore trying to reel in A.J. Hobson for 6th, as Hobson not too far off the back bumper of Charles Teed for 5th place. But Robert Maleska III got the race lead with the timing of that yellow flag. Matt Wagner, who had led every lap up to that point, now runs back in 2nd. And while the lap times are the same, the situation has changed. Wagner is no longer in clean air. And so now the question is, A, does he have a strong enough car that he had earlier on to be able to get up there and challenge Maleska for the lead again? Or B, is he going to have to wait potentially on pit strategy to get this lead back?
I mean, here's really the decision time that you really have to make in your mind of, am I going to try and chase him down? Because if I'm going to try to chase him down, I can't be saving fuel. But I've got to pick one or the other. Either I save fuel and try to beat him on strategy, or I'm going to try and track him down and try to outrace him. And I think at this moment, I think it'd be extremely smart for Wagner just to kind of keep back about 1 second, just try to save as much gas, save as much fuel as possible, or save as much tire as possible, and see if you can beat him on strategy, undercut him.
He's taking a very unusual line through 1 and 2 especially, drives it right down there to that yellow rumble strip, doesn't touch it, but puts his left sides right beside it, and then swings the car out wide almost to the wall off of turn 2. So if you kind of looked from an aerial view, you'd probably be almost looking at him forming the letter D at an oval.
And that's the thing, like I'm trying to figure out whether that was the line he was running earlier or if he's tried to adapt his line to what Maleska's running. Again, if you got confidence in your line, I mean, obviously you're not going to deviate from it, but if someone else is trying, doing another line that's pretty much having a lot more speed, you got to experiment around. The track does change.
Greg Forsyth and Alex Van de Sande, after being mired back in traffic, they are slowly, methodically working their way back up towards the top 10. Forsyth has moved into 16. Van de Sande just got around Kristen Nelson for the 17th position. Both of these drivers being back in traffic are running slightly slower than the race leaders, but that's the thing that we're going to be having to keep an eye on, is just how slow a process it is for these drivers, because there's going to be traffic that's going to come into play. If we manage to go green to the end, that leaders are going to have to deal with. If they come down pit road early, there's going to be others that decide to stay out longer, and we know that the lap times are going to have a huge difference between the older tires and the fresher tires.
I've been kind of fearing about talking about him, but I'm going to jinx him again. I mean, Gale Brooks, it's been a story of his life. I mean, 1 week it's a great week, next week it's a terrible week, and it's kind of same thing week after week. I mean, what do you make of this?
And
I've never seen him have such good luck and such bad luck.
Well, I'm going to say it's the different configurations of tracks. I mean, you consider the fact that we don't really go to any track that is similar to another. I've tried to make comparisons here today about it being a short track, so look at drivers that did well at Iowa and Worldwide Technology. It's got the low banking, so look at someone that maybe did good at Phoenix. But every single track has its own uniqueness, so there's no consistency for a driver to be able to lean on here. You've got different types of short tracks, different types of 1.5 miles, different 2-mile tracks in the form of Auto Club in the season opener, and you got the 2.5-mile speedway of Auto Club at the end of the season. You've got different configurations of road courses, from the long ones at Circuit of the Americas to the shorter ones at Watkins Glen. So, you're going to a brand new track every single week. I think that plays a huge factor into the up and down seasons that we've seen a number of drivers have this year.
Talking about it earlier, we were kind of joking about this in pre-race. I mean, we were kind of looking at the new schedule and kind of making some comments about it, but we saw that Nick Degroot actually made a comment on, looks like Twitter, said he circled every 1.5 mile track or larger, and we kind of questioned, does that mean he's coming for road courses too, or?
Yeah, we were wondering, a lot of the road courses out there are over 1.5 miles long, so.
Well, hey, he finishes top 3, we'll ask him.
Well, we have seen Nick Degroot over in other series before as well in these Indy cars, and I can say from personal experience, I have seen him run pretty well at road courses. So maybe he did mean the road courses as well.
Obviously, I can already tell that Long Beach will test these drivers in various ways, as well as Road America. And I dare say Canadian Tire, since that first left-hander can really ruin your day.
So now the question comes, when do you come to pit lane? Because we saw drivers try to short pit in the form of Craig Forsyth and Alex Van de Sant. It did not work for them. It did work with the time of the caution for Robert Maliska III. Right now, according to the numbers, drivers could come to pit road as early as lap, I believe, 75. Lap 75 is the earliest they could come to pit road, which is just in 10 laps. If they want to stretch it the furthest possible, they can go as far as lap 90. So let's say you're a driver out here, Matt. You've got that choice. What do? Do you try and come down pit road, get the fresh tires, try and jump the rest of the field, and maybe lay down some faster lap times to gain track position on the shorter run? Or do you try and stretch this thing as far as possible and come down pit road with the fresher tires on the sprint to the finish?
I mean, obviously, as long as I'm not losing that much time, I'd rather stay out, keep putting laps on the track, obviously for a caution. I mean, just hope for I can trap someone a lap down and they won't be able to get back. Now, on the flip side of it, I mean, if I do an undercut here and I know I'm faster, I can really hope that the guy in front or the guy that I'm racing, hey, hopefully he's going to make a mistake. Maybe he'll stay out longer thinking he's faster, and I can really just put down these fast laps, but I'll be at a disadvantage if I really don't get some help here.
All the answers to those questions will be happening shortly, as we are more than halfway through this race right now. Robert Maliska III leading Matt Wagner by 1.5 seconds, closing in on 50 laps to go. We're going to step aside for a commercial break. We'll be back when those green flag pit stops begin here at the Milwaukee Mile for the Dark Horse IndyCar Series.
It's a road few dare to travel, a journey filled with danger and unpredictability. So why do we traverse this road? Why do we take such a gamble? Because if we don't try, we'll never know what we could have achieved. That's why we strap in, rev up, and fix our focus on the ultimate prize. Because the reward is well worth the risk. The 2021 NNSCRA Daytona 500, Saturday, February 20th, exclusively on Flatout Racing Network.
ETE Reman is the world's best remanufacturer of transmissions for import and domestic cars and trucks. Based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, our customers are repair shops, auto parts stores, dealerships, and distributors. And with 6 nationwide warehouses, we're where and when you need us. So when you're looking for a transmission that is like new, only better, instill confidence and install ETE Reman.
It's a road few dare to travel, a journey filled with danger and unpredictability. So why do we traverse this road? Why do we take such a gamble? Because if we don't try, we'll never know what we could have achieved. That's why we strap in, rev up, and fix our focus on the ultimate prize. Because the reward is well worth the risk. The 2021 NNSCRA Daytona 500, Saturday, February 20th, exclusively on Flatout Racing Network.
ETE Reman is the world's best remanufacturer of transmissions for import and domestic cars and trucks. Based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, our customers are repair shops, auto parts stores, dealerships, and distributors. And with 6 nationwide warehouses, we're where and when you need us. So when you're looking for a transmission that is like new, only better,
Closing in on 45 laps to go. Actually, we've hit 44 laps to go. So the fuel window is open for drivers to make it the rest of the way should they so choose. We've already got a taker on pit road.
You know, I'm looking at Gary Corley. I don't think that was the scheduled pit stop. I mean, he was coming out of 2, nailed the back stretch wall, and almost slowed down to about 50 miles an hour, just limping it back to pit road.
Yeah, you could definitely see that was not a normal pit road entry by any stretch, and we were talking about this during the commercial break. Not really many drivers have had to use a faster pair here today. They've only got one at their disposal. Gary Corley, though, who's brought out the only caution of the day, is the only one we know for absolute certain did use a faster pair, and so getting that added damage, having to come down pit road, going to lose him quite a bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of, on a show of hands, I mean, these guys who have really not a great day. I mean, one of those guys definitely has to be Gary Corley, and another one of those has to be Nicholas Winook. I mean, Winook has, he just kind of missed it this week. And, you know, some weeks are just not your week, and unfortunately, I don't think this one is his. Another one has to be Jimmy Dryden after having that really hot start. After that caution, or at first caution, just has not recovered. Another surprising one, at least, has to be Van de Sant. He seemed off.
Yeah, he seemed off just from the start, really. Started this race outside of the top 5. We're used to seeing him up inside the top 5 week after week, no matter what type of configuration the track may be, as we're watching this battle around the 6th position with Hobson, Moore, and Peterson. But we did have another driver that we just saw came down pit road. He got bit by the short pit strategy earlier on with the timing of a yellow, fell a lap down, got the wave around, and Craig Forsyth, again, going back to the short pit strategy. Looks like Jim Harrick in the 57 coming down here as well. Remember, these drivers, they can go as far as lap 90 should they so choose, but a couple of drivers deciding to undercut it here.
I mean, you got to think, but just try to shake it up a little bit. Try to do something different from your competitors. I mean, see if you can catch them off guard.
Jim Harrick is 12th in points coming into this race. Craig Forsyth, 9th in the standings, so could be a couple of drivers making some last-minute moves to maybe get themselves up inside of the top 5 in the point stands at season's end. Todd Schneider in the 86 come to pit lane here as well, as Kobe Moore was up on the back bumper of A.J. Hobson for 6 just moments ago. Had to check up through 3 and 4,
Ooh.
And now there's a little bit of distance between the two.
I'm going to tell you, if Robert Miletzka about had a heart attack, I think that was the 57 of Jim Harrick. Harrick almost ran right in the back of that 91 coming to pit road.
Miletzka is on pit lane now. Covey Moore in the 15 coming to pit road. And so this is the question we were asking about. Matt Wagner led the early portion of this race, the first 40 laps, lost the lead on that caution to Robert Miletzka III. Would this round of green flag pit stops be where Wagner gets the race lead back from Robert Miletzka III? We're just going to have to wait and see, as Alex Van de Sant has hit pit road in the 317. Looks like Kobe Moore just now leaving pit road.
You know, I'm really wondering if Miletzka kind of went to pit road to try to get away from some of the lap cars. I mean, he was kind of catching a big pack there, and he was having, looks like a little bit of cars.
I know, obviously, there's no playoffs here, but I'm going to liken the strategy of Robert Miletzka III to a driver that wins the season opener and locks himself into the playoffs. He's got the luxury to kind of play with strategies like that to see if it'll work out, to maybe give him his 8th trip to victory lane, just with the fact that he has a 170-plus point lead coming into tonight, as looks like our 2 race leaders now, Matt Wagner and Nick Degroot, have hit pit road.
Yeah, that's the thing where Miletzka's really just kind of raced himself into a position where he doesn't really have to go out and perform every time. If he really wants to take an easy off week or kind of just ride around, and I mean, again, this is kind of uncharacteristic for a racer, but even if he kind of just wants to ride around and have fun, he doesn't have to.
Eric Schaus was the race leader. He came to pit road. Charles Teed going to follow him in. And now we've only got, I think, 3 drivers that are yet to pit, and they'll probably be in here in the next lap and a half. Dylan Moskowitz out in front. Jim Brooks, and we're also waiting on Joe McAdory, as here comes the 3, here comes the 76. So, yep, right around lap 90, everybody's going to be making what is probably going to be their final stop of the day. We've run clean and green aside from one incident back on lap 45, and we could very well be looking at a race that's going to finish under green flag conditions with 30 laps to go. The gap now,
caution out.
Oh, no, there's a car there on the back straightaway facing the wrong way. That was Victor Santos in the 24.
I wonder if he spun out coming out of pit road.
He very well could have. I'm almost wondering, too. I was wondering about this when we saw them running down there on the inside of 1 and 2, how that was considered a racing line. If drivers were coming off pit road using that as an access lane, would there be contact between drivers that were on the racetrack using that as a bit of a shortcut and drivers that were coming off of pit lane?
I just looked at it. It looks like Santos just got a little bit over grandiose, kind of getting off of pit road. But I'm going to tell you, 2 people that about had a heart attack has to be Craig Forsyth and Jim Harrick.
Here's the 24 coming off of pit lane. And let's see what it... Oh, yeah, wow. That thing just snapped on him. My goodness.
I think it's just a combo of cold tires, and these cars do have a lot of torque in the lower gears, and I think he just put the foot down trying to get back up to speed. I mean, he saw the car in front of him, wants to get up to him, and just too much, too early, just snapped right around.
You're absolutely right. It is amazing that was just a single car incident, because there were about 2-3 drivers that were coming off the corner there, and you saw right there, as we were riding on board with him, when he shifted up a gear, the car actually wanted to snap around on him, even coming through turn 1. So I think you hit the nail right on the head, just with the low gear and revving up the car, having the wheel spin. I think that's exactly what happened to the 24.
I will say, as a driver, it's embarrassing. You never want to have those kind of rookie mistakes that you know in your head, I can't do this, and it happens to the best of us.
Santos, who last week had a 3rd place run, Kentucky, still sits on pit road getting repairs done on his number 24, currently 3 laps down. I believe the lucky dog under this caution will be going to the 86 of Todd Schneider. If not him, it would have gone already to Kristen Nelson. I didn't look to see if the lucky dog has already gone around yet or not. But I have to wonder here, Wagner came to pit road 3 laps after Robert Mileska III did. Did he want to see this caution? Because I was going to mention just before that caution came out, what was only about maybe a 1.5 second gap between the two had increased to nearly 4 seconds.
Yeah, I don't really think this is really what he wanted to see. I mean, I think he would have enjoyed that little bit of cushion, just kind of play cruise control a little bit. But I mean, hey, plans get reset, and obviously this kind of gives him a little bit of a new opportunity for him.
Keep an eye on Covey Moore and Eric Schaus. They're going to be restarting behind the top 3 of Mileska, Wagner, and Degroot. Moore has really been cutting his way through the field and been making some heart-stopping moves to try and work his way through the field. Was involved in a couple of 3-wide situations during the course of this race. And Eric Schaus has also been another driver picking his way through. And how about Alex Van de Sant? We talked about him doing the short pit early on in this race, getting trapped a lap down, found himself mired around the 14th, 15th position, and now he finds himself back up in the thick of it in 6th position.
I mean, realistically, I look at all 3 of those that you just mentioned, and Moore and Schaus, they really have nothing to lose here. I mean, they're just trying to go get a race win. So, I mean, here's the thing: if they wreck, they wreck. I mean, they come out next week and they try it all over again. But Van de Sant, I mean, he's really looking here and saying, hey, he's still on the very slim chance that he can really kind of maybe make a mark in this championship. But again, he has to have incredible fortune. He needs to go up there, lead most laps, win the race, and he needs Mileska to have issues. And currently, those are not happening.
We've only had 2 cautions so far in this race, and we are 3/4 of the way through tonight's event. However, this is the closest that these drivers are all going to be for positions since our first restart all the way back on lap 46. So, the question is, after 2 very long green flag runs, do we see the caution emerge a couple more times here now with drivers eyeing top 5s and top 10s?
I mean, you may have looked at that. Man, that looks a little bit weird. But obviously, lap cars are allowed to keep their position, so that kind of worked inadvertently to Matt Wagner's at least case there.
Yeah, it was Jimmy Dryden in the 94 that was able to hold his position up there as Wagner trying to close in on Maleska III, who was trying to cut the draft down the back straightaway. The gap right now, about 0.3 of a second between those two, and Nick Degroot drives it deep into turn one, looking for second place.
Is this the big three? Robert Maleska, Matt Wagner, and Nick Degroot?
Well, I think you got to say the big four. You got to add Van de Sant in there.
And realistically, I'm looking at Kobe Moore right now, and Moore is just driving this thing. I mean, he looks on at least a kind of equivalent of a lawn dart, but man, he's making it work.
He definitely is. He's been making moves work all race long that honestly I didn't think were going to pan out for him. Now finds himself up here inside of the top 5, and right now tracking second fastest car on the track of the top 5. Battle behind them, Charles Teed, AJ Musselman, and we had a car there in the wall. I think that might have been a lap down machine that they're getting around. I think that might have actually been the 86 of Todd Schneider, as that right now is a battle between the 5 and the 54 for the 7th position.
Now I'm looking back here to battle for 11th, and a lot of these cars looks like they're just trying to kind of work their way through lap cars, but again, they're all fighting for position with new tires here and not really giving each other very much slack here.
Jim Harrick, Michael Spell, and Eric Peterson in that mix. Harrick right now holding down the 11th position. Ahead of them, AJ Hobson and Craig Forsyth fight inside of the top 10.
Just looking back here, man, it's just kind of a dogfight all over, just trying to really find your footing here.
As things look right now, at least on the fresh tires, it looks like if you're trapped on that outside line, you're going to lose the spot. We've seen the longer the run goes on, that outside line really can actually be used as a passing lane.
Vandus almost took down that too. Managed to recover it back, but Charles Teed looks like he passed him. Looks like Alex is going to give a little bit of fight now.
Yeah, looked like Van de Sant thought about crossing over there out of turn 4, then turned the wheel back to the right, looking for the outside line. Still going to have to wait and see which lane Charles Teed gives him down here in 3 and 4. Teed takes the inside line. Van de Sant follows him, trying to set up for another pass here.
And really, as I'm looking here, when you saw Maleska kind of drive out to another about second lead, obviously leader has really most advantage here, just being able to control the restarts, control lane, and kind of choose when you're able to go.
Matt Wagner started on the pole, led the first 43 laps, I believe it was, and then lost the race lead to Robert Maleska III, who is chasing his 8th win on the season. Talk about a domination in a season for one driver. Robert Maleska, 8 poles, looking for his 8th victory in only 13 starts, and it's going to be Matt Wagner in the 99, who was running in second place.
I'm wondering if maybe he just dug for a little too much.
Go back and take a look.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, that looks like he just dug for a little bit too much.
His left side's down there on the yellow line, and wow, the other thing just snaps around on him, noses it into the inside wall. That has fast repair written all over it, and even worse, though, he's going to lose a lot of track position. We had 18 cars on the lead lap at the time of this yellow flag, so that is at least how far back he will be restarting, with only a limited number of laps left to go, and a driver that was running at the time inside of the podium.
I mean, originally there was 3, but now there's 2. You've got Robert Maleska and Nick Degroot. Really, Degroot's looked fast, but I don't know if he's got the speed to really keep up with Robert here on the restarts.
Now, I want to see if we can just dissect this a little bit here, Matt, because this is the first time all race that we've really seen a car snap that badly off of turn 2. What would there have been that would have led to that car making such an evasive move to the inside wall?
Really, I'm looking at his entry here, and his entry, he kind of went all the way from the wall and then dove it all the way down. Now, you obviously see that darker part of pavement. That's a different part of asphalt there. But he dives even deeper onto that concrete. Once he gets onto that concrete, he kind of starts sliding up. The car starts plowing. So at that moment, he's starting to put a little bit more wheel into it to get it to turn. I'm afraid that maybe he just turned a little bit too much, snapped at the rear end. And once this rear end starts coming around, I mean, you've kind of got at least a little bit of a second to kind of catch it. And unfortunately, it's hard. It's hard to put it simply.
Now, obviously, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge with these type of cars. With everything you were explaining right there, that would translate to me a driver that is really trying to get every little bit he can get out of his race car. Is that maybe why we haven't seen that type of an incident until now? Drivers were basically settling in for the long run, taking care of their equipment, not trying to overstep the edge.
Yeah, I think Degroot saw the laps remaining and just kind of said, or Wagner just looked at the laps remaining and said, hey, I mean, I got to go get him now. And if I don't get him now, then I'm not going to be able to get him on more tires. So obviously just trying to push for everything he could.
Well, Matt Wagner did come down pit road, did take on his one faster pair. He remains on the lead lap, but will restart in the 18th position. Gary Corley, with this yellow flag coming out, will get back in the lead lap. He'll restart in 19th place. And so now, as you mentioned, it's kind of, and then there were two. Robert Maleska III, who was certainly looking poised to take the championship this year, looks in his rearview mirror and sees the driver that took the championship last year in Nick Degroot. Covey Moore, who's definitely been aggressive here today, going to line up there in third place, so don't count out that white number 15.
Don't count out my boy Covey. He's got this.
You got Eric Schaus back there, as well as Charles Teed. I mean, Schaus, as you mentioned, looking for that redemption from Watkins Glen a couple of weeks ago, and Charles Teed already has a short track win under his belt at Iowa this year.
I mean, there's kind of just success all around. You got to think, I mean, a lot of these guys come to perform. Maleska's just trying to finish out the race, get a good finish, and pretty much lock down this championship. I mean, if he gets a win today, I mean, I'm fairly certain to say he's got this thing. And Degroot, hey, he's just trying to put a cherry on his season. I mean, this hasn't been the best season for him. He's just trying to end it on a high note. If he can go and sweep the last few races, I mean, that's what he's wanting to do. And look at Covey. Covey just wants to win. Covey's just all happy and happy and fine here.
It's been a long road for Nick Degroot. After the season opener, he was 23rd in points. After last week in Kentucky, he's worked his way up to third in the standings, and he is within striking distance to take second in points from Van de Sant. Green flag in the air, 13 laps to go here at Milwaukee.
You know, I'm looking behind. Schaus did not get a very good restart. Almost getting swallowed up by Teed and Van de Sant now.
Now they're going to split almost three wide down the back straightaway. Teed's going to take the position maybe out of turn 4. Yes, he will clear for the position. And now it's going to be Schaus battling back against Van de Sant to hold on to 5th.
Hobson almost just took out the back of AJ. And I mean, he's got it close to some of these cars today.
Van de Sant now going to be battling here with, close there between himself and AJ Musselman. And he was to the inside of make that to Eric Schaus as well. Now it's going to be Musselman and Van de Sant for the 6th position. Good run there for AJ Musselman. And how about Craig Forsyth? Two of these drivers right there in your shot. Van de Sant and Craig Forsyth were a lap down back at lap 40. This is why you run all the laps, because you don't know how it's going to turn out. Both these drivers now up inside of the top 10, closing in on 10 laps to go.
I think Craig's little heart attack with the 24 coming off pit road may have just sparked a little bit of new life in him. Hey, if I survive that, maybe I can go up there and get a good top 5.
Absolutely. Right now, Robert Maleska III, he has found a new gear. That last time by, he was a 10.5 quicker than both Nick Degroot and Covey Moore. You can see it visibly translate to quite a bit of space on the racetrack as well. So if Nick Degroot is going to have anything for Robert Maleska III, he's got to start chipping away now. Otherwise, he's not going to have enough laps to work with.
Yeah, I'm looking at Degroot, and Degroot's definitely keeping him honest. I mean, if there's one thing that I will commend about Degroot is he has consistency. He can find a fast lane and stick to it. And I think that's really Robert's Achilles heel, where Robert's fast. Don't get me wrong. Roberts can put down those hot laps, but I haven't noticed him being as consistent as Degroot.
AJ Hobson continues to drop. He's now fallen to 11th place, and we nearly had contact between Jim Brooks and Jim Harrick just moments ago as well. These drivers all back here racing tooth and nail from about the 10th to the 16th position. Eric Peterson and Jim Harrick got awfully close there.
Peterson, as you mentioned earlier in the race, he's still looking for that first top 10.
Look at there, Jim Harrick trying to slice behind Peterson in front of Kristen Nelson. Now he goes back to the inside of the 36. About 4 or 5 cars in this mix. Right behind them, you see the familiar blue 99 of Matt Wagner trying to work his way through the field. Still running in the 18th position. Last car on the lead lap.
And I'm still looking at this lead here, and Maleska and Degroot may have kept about the same 0.5 the entire time. Degroot seems to be rolling, I'd say, 3 and 4 a lot better than 1 and 2, but Maleska can really kind of turn it on the straights.
Boy, that time, though, it was Nick Degroot by 0.3 of a second faster than Robert Maleska III. So maybe the one might be catching a little bit of the slipstream off the back of the 91, allowing him to close up, especially in the straightaways. He's also changed up his line, running about a half groove higher than the 91 through 3 and 4.
I mean, everything I want to point out is, again, we mentioned it didn't really have that big of an effect, but now that I'm thinking about it, with the Maleska kind of running in the lead, we did mention the leader fell off in times a little bit, while always the guy behind had consistent times the entire race. I mean, Maleska's on about 3-4 lap older tires than Degroot. I don't know how big of a factor that's playing in.
Yeah, I don't either, to be honest with you, but I was noticing that as well, as it's now going to be 2.5 laps when they hit the back straightaway here. The gap increased that last time by now half a second again between the 91 and the 1. It's getting closer to the point of Nick Degroot not necessarily making the move. It's coming more to the 91 of Maleska III making a mistake, and he's at only 2 more miles to go.
I mean, if you ask Covey, I mean, he'll say he never wanted his teammates to wreck, but he's sitting back there in third like, please, please, please just hit each other.
Gap right now about maybe 4 car lengths between Maleska III and Nick Degroot. Degroot runs it really wide there off of 4, trying to gain something, but he almost got the wall for his troubles as the white flag is in the air, and what has been a career year is just going to keep accumulating the accolades. 8 poles coming into tonight, 7 victories, and he's about to make it 8 with his 11th top 5 and 12th top 10. Robert Maleska III wins at the Milwaukee Mile.
Man, he definitely worked for that one today, but I mean, look at Covey Moore, 3rd place. Not bad.
Absolutely. Great run for him. Nick Degroot, after what's really just been a scratch and claw season for him, he's going to finish the evening out on the podium. And what about the comeback run there for Alex Van de Sant, who was a lap down earlier on? He's going to bring it home 5th behind Charles Teed, who's going to pick up his 3rd top 5 of the season.
I would say a little bit of a heartbreak, at least in my book, is Eric Peterson didn't get that top 10. I'm pulling for him at Homestead.
He got close. He worked his way up to 14th, and of course the other heartbreak has to be Matt Wagner. I mean, had the pole position, led early on in this race, had that incident there where there wasn't even any contact with another driver, just a driver mistake, and he finished last car on the lead lap in the 18th position. This is a driver that, even if he hadn't won, was more than likely going to finish in the podium, if not for that spin off of turn 2.
I mean, hasn't that summed up so many seasons where,
I mean,
yeah, you think you're doing well, and then again, just out of nowhere, it's almost like Maleska kind of just hits the switch, like, you know what, you've had your time in the light. All right, time for me to show up.
And we mentioned at the beginning of this race how it's basically right now looking like the championship could easily be decided before we even get to the season finale at Indianapolis, and it continues to look even more so as Maleska with his 8th win on the season. I mean, just to put this in perspective here, Matt, Van de Sant finishing in 5th place. I don't think Van de Sant led a lap here today, so there could be 200 points separating 1st to 2nd by the time we get to next week's race.
You know, I'm personally willing to say that I think Maleska, I think he probably clinched it with this. I mean, talking a few weeks back that really if he won one more race, that he would have had it, and I think he may have done it today.
And I think that the biggest factor into him winning here today would have been, of all things, a caution flag back on lap 45. As I mentioned, he had crossed the commitment line to come down pit road for a green flag pit stop. When the caution came out, he was already on pit road, so he was able to get his service done. When everybody else came down pit road, he was still on the lead lap, inherited the lead, and never looked back. As we look at the remainder of the top 10 here today, Eric Schaus will finish in 6th. Good run there for AJ Musselman. He battled hard in the second half of this race for 7th. Craig Forsyth was another driver like Alex Van de Sant that battled back after getting trapped a lap down with the untimely caution for them. He'll finish 8th. Michael Spell in the 88 is going to bring it home in the 9th position. I'll have to check back, but I think it is his first top 10 of the season, so good on him. And then Dylan Moskowitz going to bring it home in the 10th position.
I mean, that just kind of shows you the amount of talent in this league that, like I said, it's hard to kind of get your first top 10. I mean, look at all the great guys outside the top 10 that really just kind of just have been battling all season. Just, it's tough. And obviously, you got Eric Peterson out here, Gale Brooks in the 13th place. I see him with a good rebound finish.
Victor Santos, who had the podium finish last week, going to finish 3 laps down after the incident coming off of pit road. And the only driver that finished out of the race here today at the conclusion of these 120 laps was David Leclaire, finishing in the 25th position. But what do you say, Matt? Let's see if we can get some of our podium finishers here tonight.
Oh, why not? Let's see if we can get Covey in here. If I can find Covey. Ah, there he is. He's been hiding from me.
Hey, Kobe, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you guys. How's it going?
Man, we were seeing drivers out there being a little bit tentative in terms of making passes, but not you, man. That 15 was wound up and ready to make moves. Looked like that car was one of the fastest out there in terms of picking up spots. If you'd had a couple more laps to be able to work with maybe a longer green flag run, did you have anything for the top 2?
Oh, goodness, no. It was real tough to pass here. The short track configuration with the amount of downforce that's on the car just makes it kind of follow the leader and find a bit of clean air. I definitely made up a lot of time doing the undercut. I saw Robert Pitt ended up being 3 laps before a lot of other people did, and I thought that guy's fast. He's won a lot of races this year. We deal with him a lot, and I should probably follow what he's doing. And I was able to get clean track for about a lap and a half, 2 laps, while everyone else was making their way onto pit lane, and I think that made the difference up for me getting really moving forward.
I mean, Covey, I know it's a little bit early to be talking about next season, but again, I mean, obviously with the points battle kind of being a little bit sewn up here, you've been looking fast these few weeks, man. You got anything for next season?
I sure would hope so. I like to think that I have something for this season yet, too. I showed up last season and won my first 2 races out, and the competition definitely stepped up this year. This is probably one of the best leagues, at least for me, to kind of be able to push myself without it being so out of reach that you can't quite get there. So, I mean, I'd like to think each week that I could be in the hunt for a win, but I think it's being realistic and having goals that are accomplishable with the competition that's here, and just trying to click off those top 5s. Me and Nick are really focusing on that team championship, and we want to put the fire to the Moskowitz Malechka team that's keeping pace.
So, Kobe, one question that we had up here in the booth that we weren't really sure about was if there was a difference in tire wear, if it would gain you or lose you any speed out there on the track. Now, obviously, with the timing of that last caution, some drivers had about 3 laps pressure tires, some others had maybe 5 lap pressure tires, but really nothing exceeded into the double digits in terms of tire wear from one driver to another. But did just those extra 3 laps of tires on up for a driver as opposed to someone else, did that make a difference?
No, not too much. Actually, during practice, we had a hilarious moment between Nick and I in our Discord. I was just doing a long fuel run, and he got behind me, and he asked me if I was pushing hard. And I said, well, I'm just towards the end of a fuel run. And he says, okay, because I'm having trouble passing you, and I'm on fresh tires. I was at the end of said fuel run at 40 laps on the tires, and he was on 5 or 6 lap old tires. So at the end of the day, it came down to finding that clean air and just being able to find a spot where you could put the car where you're going to have that clean air through at least 2 sets of corners to be able to move forward.
Well, Covey, congratulations on another solid outing here today. Another podium finish for you, 3rd place tonight at the Milwaukee Mile. We're going to give you the opportunity now for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Thank Cowboy Shit, 3D Bull Riding, and the Ty Posbon Foundation for being on the car. Brandon, buddy of mine's watching. My mom Lisa, she likes to tune in on Wednesday nights, and just thank Nick and everyone that kind of supports this factory back team. We're having a lot of fun doing what we're doing out here, and just getting a little bit faster week after week. So thanks for what you guys do, and we'll see you next week.
It's Kobe Moore, his 6th top 5 run of the season, as he's going to be the 3rd place finisher here tonight in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So congratulations on a great run there, Kobe, and we look forward to seeing what you can do next week at the beach of Homestead, Miami.
Thanks again.
All right, let's see if we can get our defending champion, 2nd place finisher here tonight, Nick Degroot. Nick, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Man, you had a strong car here tonight, never fell outside of the top 3, but on that final restart, it looked like you were falling, then you closed, then you fell again. I mean, what was going on there? Did you use up your stuff a little too much?
Oh, no, just that lead is so good here with that clean air, and I was trying everything I could to bridge that gap, hoping maybe catch the curb or he'd start mirror driving just by getting close to him, but that restart was the moment. That was the one chance I had, and I just didn't get a good enough of a run. So good. Happy for Robbie. Oh, I mean, I'm not happy, but congrats to Rob. He got his 8th one of the season. And, yeah, I'm pretty sure I ran 3rd that whole race. From, like, green flag to checkered flag, just ran 3rd. So pretty solid, calm race for me.
Now, Nick, I got to ask you the burning question in both myself and Seth's minds. And we saw your comment on next season's schedule. You're circling all the 1.5 miles and above. You're circling road courses as well, or just ovals?
I mean, I say I'm looking forward to the 1.5 miles and above, but if you look at this season, my 1 win's at Phoenix, just finished 2nd here in Milwaukee, so I don't know, maybe I need to take a look at that because I'm doing pretty well on these shorter ovals. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited to be back up here battling for wins again. I felt like these past few weeks we've been much closer, much more competitive, and just in it again. It felt at the beginning of the season where we were behind, so it's cool to be right back in it.
You know, when we were calculating the numbers up here, Nick, with when you drivers are going to make that final trip to pit road, we were just talking moments ago with Kobe Moore, and he said that there really wasn't a whole lot of difference in speed between old tires and new tires. Drivers on new tires still had some difficulty getting around drivers that maybe only had 5, 6, 7 lap older tires. So how did that play a factor into when you decided to bring your car down pit road?
Yeah, wow. I just thought that the longer I went, the better, because I was hoping to catch caution, catch Rob a lap down. That was the one thing I was really hoping for. And it turns out the one yellow we had earlier helped him because he was able to jump Wagner and get in the lead. But I didn't have that kind of help, even though I pushed the run. So his strategy was undercut, pit early. My strategy was go long, try to catch a yellow. Didn't really work out, but again, didn't lose any spots. So can't complain.
Well, Nick, congratulations on a great run here tonight. 2nd place here at the Milwaukee Mile, and we were talking about that. It looks like you're going to make it a pretty good fight for 2nd in the point stands, at least here down the home stretch, and good start to that here with this runner-up finish. We're going to give the opportunity now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, Factory Back Motorsports. So cool to get I believe our first double podium of the season. Got Kobe there 3rd, me 2nd. And, yeah, Cowboy Shit, all these people that support the team, and my family at home that I know is watching. So, yeah, hopefully next week, 1 position higher. That's what we're aiming for.
We'll see if that's going to be the case next week at Homestead, Miami. But for now, congrats on your 2nd place run here tonight at Milwaukee. And we look forward to seeing you continue this down the home stretch of the season.
Thank you, guys.
Let's go down to Victory Lane, a place that this driver is very familiar with this season. Robert Maleska III picking up win number 8 on the year. Robert, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you, boys.
Matt, we talked with you last week after your victory at Kentucky, and you said at this point in time, you're just out there to run, win races, and have fun. And it certainly looked like you had that here today, but I want to go all the way back to the deciding factor that gave you this race lead when you made the choice to short pit, come down pit road, and the caution comes out. Next thing you know, you're out there in clean air.
Yeah, I was in a Discord call with Kobe and Nick in practice, and Kobe was on 40-lap tires, Nick was on fresh tires, and Nick could not get near him. So I knew once we caught lap traffic, it'd be hard for us pass the lap cards without, unless they like gave us the spot. So I knew once we caught a pack of 3 or 4, I was going to pit and hopefully get the undercut. And I got a lucky caution there, I'll tell you that.
Now, I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. I mean, we kind of, I'm not sure if you exactly saw what happened to Wagner.
Yeah,
kind
he
of
got the curb,
lost. Yeah. I mean, have you looked back at it? Because when we were looking at it, we were wondering if he just kind of was pushing a little bit too hard and lost it out of the corner, or really just kind of hit the curb too much and lost traction.
Yeah, I was just talking to the boys about that. In practice, it wasn't that big of a deal, but once we got 20, 30 laps on the tires, at least to me it seemed, if you caught that curb in 1 and 2 pretty big, when the car would offload off the corner after you catch the curb, it would get really really light in the back end. So you can probably manage it if if you open the wheel up on exit, but I think Matt it sounded like he just did not expect it, which I wouldn't have expected that much to just spin him like that, let alone I guess take him out of the race, which was unfortunate for him.
All right, so Robert, we've seen you win races this season at just about every configuration. We've seen you win at the road courses, tonight here at the short track. We've even seen you win at the 1.5 miles back at Texas. So I got to ask, heading into next week at Homestead, Miami, what do you think the odds are of maybe putting this 91 in victory lane for the 9th time this season?
I'd say pretty good. I think it's going to be a decent amount of pack racing. If we can have, good multi-group racing, that'd be great. But yeah, I think Homestead's one of I'd say probably top 5 strongest tracks on here. Any track that I can run the top, usually that's I'd say I'm somewhat close to unbeatable. But yeah, hopefully if we can run the top, I'd say I have a very good shot at winning. But like I said, every week so far, as long as I get top 3, top 5, I'll be happy with that.
Robert, it doesn't take very long for you drivers to make a lap here at Milwaukee, but I was able to run through in the span of that final lap all the accolades you've been able to pile up here, and there's still 6 races left to go, so still a lot more achievements that you're able to get here, including that Indianapolis 500 trophy at the end of the season. But man, you have been on a tremendous roll. Congratulations on another trip to victory lane here tonight, and now we're going to give the opportunity to do some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to you guys for announcing this thing, FRN for streaming it, HyperX for sponsoring our league, and yeah, just unfortunate that we couldn't have passed much, but luckily the strategy worked out for me at the end.
That's Robert Maleska III. 8th time this season he gets to burn it down. Tonight it's at the Milwaukee Mile. Congratulations, Robert, and once again, go enjoy that victory, and we look forward to seeing if you can make it 9 wins next week when you guys head to Homestead.
Yep, thanks, boys.
So as we conclude our coverage here tonight from the Milwaukee Mile, the one word that Maleska just said there, Matt, that made my ears perk up next week, pack racing. That should be fun.
Well, if you remember, you can show up to the racetrack next week, but I don't think any of us will be here. We've got one off week next week, and then we head to Homestead on the 14th.
I'm at the wrong track. Send help. Oh, but man, okay, so I got 2 weeks of anticipation for this thing, but I mean, I think if we kind of look at this, with possibly the exception of Wagner and Van de Sant at the road courses, a track like Homestead with pack racing, that's basically where we're going to be looking at for a driver to maybe topple Robert Maleska III off the podium of victory lane.
Easily. But, kind of the talk about teams kind of got me thinking a little bit, and definitely looking at factory backed, I think they've kind of got a little bit of their team together. I mean, again, double podiums. When you look at Maleska and I'm trying to think of Moskowitz. I mean, they're teammates, but obviously they are kind of far apart tonight. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, definitely we know that Moskowitz, for the most part, runs the speedways. But you're absolutely right. It's like Maleska is on a slightly higher level in terms of performance than the 3 car is. Now Moskowitz is 10th in the standings, so he has had at least a consistent year. But yeah, I'm almost wondering if there is a little bit more information being passed around in factory back than there is through Twisted Trojan. And sometimes there's drivers that don't want information from their teammates. They just want to do their own thing. They just want to have the setup and the driver capability that they're going to be most comfortable with. So, whatever the factory back cars are doing, it's certainly working, and it translated into podium finishes for both of the full-time drivers here tonight, Nick Degroot and Kobe Moore. Going to be interesting to see when we go to the mile and a half at Homestead in 2 weeks' time, if that will carry over for both said drivers.
I mean, you also got to take that into the fact of, again, you kind of hit the nail on the head of, hey, not all information is good information. Hey, your teammate may tell you, hey, I wouldn't recommend running this line because I just can't get any grip here. But again, that kind of varies between cars and how personal feel of, hey, I kind of like it when it feels like that.
One thing that I was going to bring up when we had that final restart, but Nick Degroot never really did get to the back bumper of Robert Maleska III. And I still have this question heading down the stretch, looking at some of these other tracks that we're going to be at, like Homestead in 2 weeks' time, Pocono, Michigan. I mean, we saw the pack racing at Auto Club, another 2-mile speedway track at the beginning of the year. And then, of course, the Indianapolis 500. Does the fact now that it's very much looking like Robert Maleska III is going to have this championship wrapped up, if it comes down between him and another driver for a victory in one of these races, does that change the way that other driver approaches his battling for the race win with Robert Maleska III? Because if Maleska III wrecks, he's probably still going to win the championship. If that other driver finishes second, it's an opportunity lost of taking a checkered flag here this season.
Realistically, that's just kind of the position that Maleska has kind of afforded himself, because he's run great all season. Again, almost 9 wins on the season, 8 currently. But just looking at this, he put himself in this situation. He's perfectly set up where he doesn't even have to really push that hard for the rest of the season. While everyone else, even to make a run at matching him in the championship or even beating him in the championship, they have to pretty much be flawless the next about 5 weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here's the thing, too. If you look at tonight, it's a perfect translation of where Robert Maleska is at. That car, smooth as soon as he got the race lead, never really forced the issue. You saw the kind of panic that Matt Wagner had of, hey, I got to get back up there, had that mistake out of turn 2. So as you said, that's the luxury that Maleska III has been able to afford himself now, where he really doesn't have to force himself to get victories. He's able to just be quiet and consistent and comfortable with where he's at.
That's what we always talk about early in the season of, hey, decisions that you make now, runs and choices that you make now of getting as many points as possible, that can save you at the end of the season where, again, it's not one of those, and again, this is kind of meant for situations where it's like, hey, about 3-4 points away from the lead. Hey, those 3-4 points could have been ganged up the entire beginning of part of the season. But now you force yourself in the last 2-3 races to kind of gang all these points. It's sometimes just not possible.
Say it so many times that usually a lot of points that you're lacking at the end of the season translate to points you could have gained at the very first race of the year. But man, we got a little bit of an off week for these drivers and for us to be able to anticipate the pack racing in Homestead, Miami. But I don't know if that's going to be considered a cool down period for Robert Maleska III, as he has been on a hot streak. Victory lane finds him once again here tonight. It is the 3rd time this season that he has won back-to-back races. And of course, one of those points was where he had a streak of 4 wins in a row. We'll see if he can go 3 in a row when they head to Homestead, Miami in 2 weeks' time. But Matt, it's been another good one here tonight. A lot of green flag racing here at the Milwaukee Mile, leading to some pit strategy, and Robert Maleska III taking the checkered flag. Appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Absolutely. I have to say, this definitely has been one of the cleanest races of the season. Definitely nice to see.
Definitely nice to see pit road play more of a factor into the race than the cautions themselves, though there was a caution that was a huge deciding factor around 40 laps into this race. But I digress. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage from the Milwaukee Mile. In 2 weeks' time, these drivers will take to the Homestead Miami Speedway for race 14 on the season, 5th to last race of Season 3 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. For Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks for tuning in here tonight to another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.